Most of the fathers he spoke with were uncomfortable watching their girls go through puberty. That stage felt volatile, and the dads had no idea what their daughters were dealing with, so they withdrew. Can we talk about this one? I'm really trying to just keep reading, but you know why dads struggle with it? One, because it's relatively unfamiliar. I get it, because they're boys, and so their adolescent phase looks a little bit differently, in terms of what happens. But principally though, dads, listen to me, and I'm trying to say this with grace and empathy. The problem is, once you get older, pops, dad, my good sir, my bro, my cousin, all of the men, listen, once you get older, and once the kid gets older, you're going to want that bond. You're going to want that closeness and relationship, but you've outsourced all of the care and nurturing and concern and emotional labor that comes with relationship building. You've outsourced all of that to the mother. But guess what the number one element to relationship building is? Vulnerability. Men don't offer women the space for complexity, and particularly not a complexity that they're willing to delve into on a serious level. Once she no longer is that little girl in that pretty precious glass box that you want to hold and protect all day, because now she's developing a little bit more in terms of physical and mental, or she doesn't just adore you. Men want to be adored by their daughters, that they lose sight of the fact that this is a human being. This is a human being, not just your little adoration box to consume joy from. You got to consume joy from her in all of the facets of who she is. That's how you celebrate her personhood, not just her womanhood. This is a person. Hello and welcome back to my channel, family. My name is Raven, therapist, thought leader, and theologian, and I am always so happy to have you guys here with me today. I know a couple of you guys were saying I don't do my intro anymore, and I'm like, you know what? Okay. Let me get back to some continuity. At least that's what they say, grow these channels anyway, right? The point of today, though, is I have been away because I've been working on a few things, and I want to do a video about patriarchy. And I want to talk about some of the fractures that it's caused in our culture and our society. And I know that conversation has exhaustively been had, at least in part anyway, because what be feeling familiar to you, child, another person is usually like, nope, never heard of it. So saying that to say, if it's a familiar conversation for you, please reconcile the fact that you're not the only person on the planet who's thinking about things. And with that being said, I think we can always have refreshed conversations about things that are impactful to the culture, particularly negatively impactful. And with everything going on right now in the world, I could say so much politically, socially, and all of the illies. I recognize that we need to be refining our conversations and consistently reflecting on the ways that we're doing culture, the ways that we're engaging socially, and ways that we can consistently work to better our time together as humans, better our human experience on this planet, and improve the social consciousness of the world. And so with that in mind, I ran across an article in The Atlantic this morning, and I was like, I'm actively working on a video about patriarchy right now, and it's a more scripted, longer video essay. But then also I was thinking, like, this article kind of plays into some of the things that I'm already working on. So I was like, I can maybe change the style of my content a little bit, read the article with you guys, and then just reflect or react in real time, because I've already read it, but give you my honest reactions, and also just tie that into some of the patriarchal conversations that I'm already having or working on for a longer video essay. I don't know, but we're going to try this out. This is a little trial and error with you guys, but I think I want to create more of a warm, kind of natural, relaxed environment with my audience. I'm really struggling to do that because I'm a millennial, but I'm a younger millennial, but still a millennial nonetheless. So it's difficult for me not to be polished and refined and present things that are more refined, but it's no time like the present to try things, right? So that's what we're going to do today. And obviously, as a therapist and as a daughter who has a father, who has a fractured relationship with her father, I can speak to this from various angles, right? So that's kind of what I'll be doing today, while also kind of tying it into some cultural, social moment stuff at the same time, to just have a broader conversation about this obvious fracture that's causing a lot of problems in our culture. Okay, so let's get started. The article is called The Father-Daughter Divide: Why They Crave Closeness But Struggle to Connect by Isabel Woodford. Growing up, Melissa Schultz sometimes felt like she had two fathers. One version of her dad, she told me, was playful and quick to laugh. He was a compelling storyteller who helped shape her career as a writer, and he gave great bear hugs. He often bought her small gifts, a pink princess phone when she was a teen, toys for her sons when she became a mom. Some of their most intimate moments came when she cut his hair. It was, she said, a way to be close without talking. He was there for her in hard times too. When her engagement ended, he helped pack her things and drove her home. But she told me their relationship could also be turbulent. Don't I know it? The other version of her father was dark and would get so angry that he seemed to lose control. He would freeze her out for months at a time if she challenged him. He'd call her names, even in front of her own kids. I want to pause there because that struck me so much too. So for context, I don't really have I don't have a relationship at all with my dad. I grew up in a house with my dad. I grew up in the house with both parents, both biological parents. They're still married to this day, but my dad was a classically 50s guy, if you will. I often compare him to the dad in Fences, the movie Fences with Denzel Washington. Maybe I'll post a clip here. But the point is, he was traditionally masculine, provider, protector, all of the things. My mom really didn't pay any bills. She paid bills, but it was mostly the marginal things like groceries and whatnot. So it was very, very American traditional family. What happens in the house stays in the house, that kind of a thing. Anyway, he was emotionally unavailable, emotionally abusive in a lot of ways, but largely because he experienced a lot of stress and work overwhelmed him and he just didn't know how to emote at all. You can tell that he'd gone through a significant amount of trauma in his own childhood, and we can go on and on about that. My point in saying that though is, as I've gotten older, even more recently, like presently, he's tried so hard to extend his hand to me. Well, that's not true, actually. He's tried in his own way to extend his hand to me and become more available, but I can literally see him warring with the difficulty of that because he just does not know how to emote or connect in any way. Him and I's relationship now is, if you could really call it a relationship. Like when I see him, I speak, which is interesting because we just didn't do that when I was younger. But when I see him now, I speak and I'll say hello. And every blue moon, he'll come into a room with all of us, me and all my siblings and my mom, and he'll maybe engage like a tiny bit, but then something will go awry. We'll bring up something that maybe happened in the past, and not in critique of him, but just in like a small conversation about something. And then you can tell that he gets defensive, and then what'll happen is him and I will probably get into it. We'll have a screaming match or something, because back in the day I wouldn't do that, but now, child, I'm not scared of him like I used to be. And so now I buck up. And before you know it, now all of the greetings that we've progressed to in our relationship, saying, hey, how you doing? That'll stop for a few months until he calms down again. One time we got into it and I texted him and I was like, I'm sorry for screaming. I didn't mean to do that. It didn't need to get that big. My bad. I hope you can forgive me, blah, blah, blah. He didn't text back. He never texts back. I hardly ever text him ever, but he didn't text back, and he literally left his read receipts on to ensure that I saw that he read it. Like the inability to just emote and connect because any small critique or conversation that moves too closely to a part in his heart that is vulnerable or touches the feelings part of his body, it's too elusive and it becomes too much. So he has to just skirt it off or ignore it altogether. I'll give more reason why I think that is later, but I get that is my point. Okay. He would freeze her out for months at a time if she challenged him. He'd call her names even in front of her own kids. He died when she was in her 30s and she grieved intensely, though she doubted whether they ever fully understood each other. Now in her 60s, Schultz told me she still mourns the relationship. I'm always worried about that too, because I've lived so long without closeness with my dad in any way. And honestly, we literally do not talk. If I'm not at my parents' house to go and get something or talk to my mom, we don't talk. We don't talk on the phone, whatever. And so I go back and forth about the thought of whether I'll grieve him when he dies. Sometimes I think I'll grieve him just on yeah, that's my dad and that's sad kind of a way. But sometimes I worry that I won't be sad in terms of just like the closeness or intimacy, because it just doesn't exist. But hearing her say this, I guess I just always get scared about what that'll be like and my numbness that I feel even now. I'm also disappointed in that and I feel bad about it. I feel conflicted about it. I'll say that. Yeah, let's keep going. To some, Schultz's story may sound familiar to some other fathers and daughters. In the 1990s, the journalist Victoria Secunda wrote in her book, Women and Their Fathers, that enriching attachments between dads and daughters were astonishingly rare. Secunda had interviewed 150 daughters and 75 dads and found that most of the relationships they described were marked by too much distance, in quotes. 2 decades later, the psychologist Peggy Drexler wrote in her 2011 book, Our Fathers, Ourselves, which drew on interviews with dozens of women, that daughters were prone to using the refrain, I love my dad, but... Evidence of a dad-daughter divide crops up in more recent research on families, too. Fathers and daughters are more likely to become estranged than other pairs within the nuclear family. According to a 2022 study of national longitudinal data, roughly 28% of women in the U.S. are estranged from their dad. That's only slightly higher than the 24% of sons estranged from their father, but significantly higher than the 6.3% of children of any gender estranged from their mother. Even in cases where contact isn't completely cut off, father-daughter relationships tend to be less close than other familial bonds. Okay, let's stop there for a second. She's going to get more into this in the article, but I want to pause here and talk about that. The fracture between fathers and daughters is about 4% higher than the fracture between fathers and sons. Upon first glance, the first thing you can think about is like, well, yeah, that's obvious because fathers and sons are of the same gender. And so, of course, they'll be able to have closer relationship with one another and understand one another a bit better because of the familiarity of gender. I get that. But then the other part to that is that we have to reckon with, and I just don't think we've learned how to do it well in our culture, is that our society as a whole, I want to be very clear, it's not just American culture. We see women as inconveniences. We see girls as inconveniences in the sense that there's something to be consumed in terms of sexual attraction, something to enjoy in terms of sexual activity and attraction, and also things that they are able to do for you. So we abuse women's inclination towards nurture and softness and femininity. We abuse that for the sake of service to everyone around us, right? And when I say everyone around us, I mean the children too. Women are supposed to be in service to everyone. Like, that's the way that we've structured our society. And I do think that there are some elements of like biological inclination that come along with some of the things that we gravitate towards. I don't want to say that it's solely a nurture thing versus a nature thing. I do think that there are elements of care and attention and prioritization that women naturally are inclined towards that come with female essence. Obviously, it gets more nuanced when you talk about gender specificity, but I'm talking about in a heteronormative context. But nevertheless, with that in mind, though, I think, yeah, we see women and girls as inconveniences and something to serve and to consume, essentially. And so some of that fracture is gender specific in terms of father and sons being a bit better and easier to engage with than fathers and daughters. But some of it is just our draconian way that we see girls and how we engage with girls and what we expect from girls. Let's just say you're the person that says, well, that's not a bad thing. I mean, at the end of the day, what's wrong with specific roles for specific genders, right? It helps to have a more complementary relationship with one another, and it helps the world to function healthily, right? But see, the problem with it, my dear, is that, what does it say? Slightly higher than 24% of sons estranged from their father, but significantly higher than the 6.3% of children of any gender estranged from their mother. The problem is, once you get older, pops, dad, my good sir, my bro, my cousin, all of the men, listen, once you get older and once the kid gets older, you're going to want that bond. You're going to want that closeness and relationship, but you've outsourced all of the care and nurturing and concern and emotional labor that comes with relationship building. You've outsourced all of that to the mother because that's her job. And so now you're estranged from the literal people that come from your low ends because you didn't think that it was your job to be emotionally invested in your children. You thought it was your job to just give and maybe pat on the head and send them on their way. But guess what the number one element to relationship building is? Vulnerability, right? You took care of me when I was sick. You wiped my bottom when I was dirty. You helped me through a difficult situation. I now see you as a place of safety, as a place of rest. But if you've never extended yourself in that way or opened yourself up in that way, how can I feel comfortable to come to you, to engage and laugh with you and share my deepest, most intimate parts about myself? I don't know you outside of you are a provider person. You do things for me. And that's if y'all are providing. But right? But if you've outsourced all of the things that are integral to relationship building to a woman because that's her role, then you don't get the right to complain or be frustrated when it's difficult to now build that with two already established people. Does that make sense? Okay, let's keep going. Even in cases where contact isn't completely cut off, father-daughter relationships tend to be less close than other familial bonds. In a 2010 study, adult daughters reported feeling less comfortable discussing personal issues, that point is that I made, with their father than they did with their mother, and relying on their dad for instrumental support rather than emotional care. Linda Nielsen, a professor at Wake Forest University who has studied father-daughter relationships for much of her career and written 5 books on the topic, has called it the weakest parent-child relationship. Of course, plenty of women have a close and loving relationship with their father, but the research is clear. Many do not. This tension hurts both fathers and daughters. Women's bond with their dad may be linked to the quality of their mental health and romantic relationship. Oh, actually, I want to make a point here too. I just remembered. Again, going back to the reason why fathers and sons do a bit better. Some of it is because I could imagine men also are socialized to remain on the surface in terms of conversation and discussion. Again, I don't think all of that is just solely patriarchally driven. Men are socialized to remain on the surface in terms of conversation and in their relationships. And so it becomes too much of an investment to engage with a woman in a way that is conducive to how women speak, right? Women are more inclined toward talking, and talking literally, quite literally, diminishes cortisol levels in women. And so that's why when women come together, it's so much easier for them to have conversation with each other. And the conversation can be, is so expansive, and it goes a million different spaces because that's how we literally decrease stress. But for men, oftentimes that feels burdensome. And so that's why when men make critiques about women, and it's like, oh, all she do is talk. So all she wants to do is just talk about things, talk about feelings, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe you guys are wired differently. Maybe you're socialized differently. And I can see how that becomes burdensome. But also, talking is a natural human tendency. And to the extent that it exhausts you, I guess I just challenge men to think through the lens of how much of that is you're just socialized to think that it's not good. It's burdensome and useless. Because if you're not producing, then you're not really valuable. Yeah, but dad, brother, there'll come a day where your physicality diminishes, right? And your capacity to do things physically and perform and create solutions via your strength or your money or whatever, your competency in terms of going to get things, that'll diminish. And if you haven't strengthened this tool to be able to engage and converse and just talk for the sake of talking, not solely just because I get women like to gossip and run our mouths a little bit. I get it. I'm not saying that you got to be solely like that. That's okay that you guys are oriented differently in many ways in terms of conversation. But I do think that there is room for growth in the space of, do you know how to just engage casually with people? This conversation about, expansive conversation about largely anything, does it make you uncomfortable? I don't know, just a thought. Okay, let's keep going. The tension hurts both fathers and daughters. Women's bond with their dad may be linked to the quality of their mental health and romantic relationships, Nielsen wrote, in father-daughter relationships. And as one 2023 study shows, parents and especially fathers who were in regular contact with their adult kids were, on average, more satisfied with their lives. Dads and daughters who grow apart speak of immense pain. Man, each craves closeness, but neither side seems sure how to get there. That's the one. I going personal for a second. I so long for a father-daughter relationship, and it's so many moments and times where I'm just like, man, it just would be so good to be able to call and get perspective or advice, or anything, just hear a perspective from a male. But the fracture is so deep that sometimes it feels impossible to trek through, particularly because my dad is so emotionally inept and immature in a lot of ways. And so any critique or anything that even remotely resembles critique or criticism of him, he immediately shuts down, or worse, he becomes dictatorial, right? And mean and aggressive, such that you can't have conversation at that point. So I can't say that I just don't know how to do it. I just don't know how to trek through that sort of a communication with somebody who is just incapable of having healthy conversation or reflective and introspective conversation. At the root of the modern father-daughter divide seems to be a mismatch in expectations. Fathers, generally speaking, have for generations been less involved than mothers in their kids' and especially their daughters' lives. But lots of children today expect more emotional support and more egalitarian treatment. Many fathers, though, appear to have struggled to adjust to their daughters' expectations. The result isn't a relationship that has suddenly ruptured so much as one that has failed to fully adapt. We haven't, and this just speaks to the broader rupture or fracture in male-female dynamic in terms of our society. Obviously, as society has progressed, the need for women to be married and to rely on men financially has diminished completely, such that now, not completely gone, I want to be very clear, but it's diminished significantly over the last 50 years or so, such that now relationships have to be predicated on things like vulnerability, closeness, emotional connection. But for centuries, men have not had to perform or show up in that way. And so quite literally, and I say this objectively and with no judgment because I recognize the world just overnight pivoted. And so the script that we've sold to boys and men that we're still actively selling to boys and men is you just have to perform. You just have to be this robotic giver and not emotionally adept or invested. That script is insufficient. And so not only, and I know we talk about it quite often with the woman and husband or the man and female relationships in terms of the romantic relationship, but I don't think and that's why I'm glad to read this article, we don't grapple with it in terms of how it impacts the child-father relationship. Because of this fracture in what we've told men they should be and how they should engage, they don't know how to talk to their kids. This little person who has little person feelings, who has big feelings, big emotions, and vulnerability comes so innate to them because they're freshly here. Everything feels scary. Everything feels weary and uncertain, right? And parents are supposed to act as emotional anchors. Hey, baby, I know that you're scared. I know this big, beautiful, chaotic world that you're engaging in for the first time right now feels alarming and you don't know what to do with it. Here, let me give you my wisdom. Let me give you my insight and also my calm to help your little body house all these feelings, and properly compartmentalize them in a way that it's healthy and in a way that makes you feel regulated. But leave it to the woman, right? No, but in all seriousness, because we've outsourced that, so easy to dismiss this stuff in conversation when you're talking about the romantic partnership because it goes straight to, well, just let the woman submit. You just need to submit. And we've just relegated it to, oh, you know what, whatever. That's fine. It just is what it is. We can have the argument because that's a grown adult woman and a grown adult man. And the man, if he wants to, he can just relegate it to the crevices of his mind. We can be dismissive about it. But it's not so easy to do that with a kid, with something that comes from you. That's where men are really disillusioned, which we're going to get to that in a second. But yeah. Oh, this is interesting. For the nearly 1/3 of American children whose parents are divorced, the time deficit can be especially profound. Only 1/3 of those separations result in equal joint custody, and mothers are more likely to become the primary caregiver. Partly for this reason, 21% of U.S. children don't live with their biological father, according to the Census Bureau. Of course, parental separation touches sons too, but it can be particularly ruinous for father-daughter relationships. One 20-year study measured the quality of relationships between fathers and their adult children post-divorce and found that 3 times more daughters than sons felt that the bond had significantly deteriorated. Candace McCullough, a family therapist in Maryland, told me that in her practice, divorce and affairs are among the most serious factors harming father-daughter relationships. I mean, yeah. For much of history, until women married, they largely relied on their father for material support. The bond between them tended to be based on a sense of mutual duty, and daughters were expected to be deferential. That changed over the course of the 20th century. As more women attained higher education and achieved financial independence, the traditional basis for father-daughter relationships eroded, which is kind of what I was getting into earlier. Because we don't have to depend on them, of course, Now we'll just expect more from them, more that the society and the culture around them or that bred them just didn't give them the tools to do. Today, children generally desire more closeness with both of their parents well into adulthood, but while many moms are prepared to provide the intimacy their children crave, the shakeup has caught lots of fathers off guard. Joshua Coltman, a psychologist specializing in family relationships, told me. He said that based on his clinical experience, many fathers are ill-equipped to meet their kids' and especially their daughters' needs. What generates closeness is another person's vulnerability, and dads may not be ready for that. Niobe Way, an NYU professor who has extensively researched men and boys, told me that the disconnect may be rooted partly in how many fathers were brought up in a context that was just so repressive, she said, and hypermasculine. Daughters, she said, are generally more free to express their feelings. Yeah, we know this. The traditional men aren't allowed to feel their feelings and women are. And so now, of course, men have difficulty expressing feelings with their kids. Yeah. Nearly all of the women I interviewed described a painful discordance with their dad. Most asked to be identified by their first name only, to speak candidly about their relationship. Child, I thought that part was so painfully funny. Like as if we're talking about like people that are blowing the whistle on some top secret stuff happening in a corrupt corporation. We're literally talking about father-daughter relationships. Most asked to be identified by their first name only, to speak candidly about their relationship, because to connect it to the last name or to be identified wholly would be to bring shame on that man. And we can't do that, right? And I'm being facetious about it, but I guess I could give some grace to it, because in as much as I have a fracture with my father and our relationship, I also recognize what brought him to this space. Not that I make excuses for it, but it is an explanation, and an explanation that I have to take into account when I reflect and engage about who he is and his behaviors and how harmful he's been. I try really hard to temper my words as much as possible without diminishing myself, because my experiences matter too. But I try really hard to be mindful of the whole situation, because in as much as he was harmful in a lot of ways, nobody is born, and specifically the things that I've learned about him in his childhood, he wasn't born wanting to be that way and wanting to be this kind of father. But life and the subset of circumstances that he was given kind of forced him into this realm. And so I try and move with grace. But I thought this part was funny though, nonetheless. Anyway, I'm just like, show your emotions, Claire, a 43-year-old educator living in France, told me. Her mother died by suicide 20 years ago, she said, and she longs to talk about her with her father. She wonders whether he thinks about her mom. What? That's so sad. I've never asked him, she said, and he hasn't asked her either. Louise, a former doctor in her 40s living in England, also rarely sees her dad engage emotionally. He'll shut things down if she tries to discuss his personal life. Mian, a 29-year-old who grew up in South Korea but now lives in London, also told me that her dad rarely asks about her life. She's unsure if he even knows how old she is or where she works. Have y'all seen those videos of, like, I think it's the Jimmy Kimmel Show, and he goes on the street and he basically asks dads, the men will be walking on the streets with their kids, and he'll ask them basic questions about their kids, like middle name, birthdays, eye color. I mean, the most rudimentary questions, and the dads without fail every single time. And like, it's obviously this playful thing that they do in jest, but I recognize that where men prioritize detail are things that are more macro oftentimes, and I'm about to make the critique of it, but I'm trying to give grace first. They're more macro, and they're more through the lens of, are you provided for? Are you protected? Are you safe? Right? I respect that. And there is an element to that contributes to why men struggle with specific small details of the child's care and well-being, the day-to-day well-being. But in the same vein, though, in addition to some of it being a macro lens, some of it is just laziness and patriarchy and sexism. I don't have to think about the small, minute details of their day-to-day lives. That's for the mom to do. Even if they don't intentionally think like that, that's the narrative that we've ingested as a culture. Oh, what's the boy doctor name? What's his birthday? Dad, snap out of it. Get up. Get some energy and invest. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. But it's your job. This is the kind of heart that parents have to commit to. Once that semen touches that egg, that sperm hits that egg and creates and generates a kid, it's now a heart that you've signed up for. Know the details. Because what if the mom checked out? What if the mom died? And I know that's morbid, but you have to think about that. What if she passed away? And you know how I know that this is true? That it's not just, well, men are just inclined differently in the way that they think. Because women, oftentimes single moms, which we know there are far more single moms than single dads, have to tap into this element of traditionally masculine things and traditionally feminine things at the same time. So women are able to turn on and go back and forth between the roles and how they show up. So it's not just well, we're just inclined this way. No. Men are just socialized to not expect that from themselves, and they haven't seen men invest in ways that are beyond just provider and protector. And so they're like, well, I don't have to put thought equity into that space, but you do. If you're a dad, you do. If you're a human, but today we're just talking about dads. Okay, let's keep going because this is getting way too long. I've never asked him. He's quite patriarchal. He's very male oriented, she said, which she attributes in part to South Korean culture. She told me that their differences can lead to cultural clashes, a feeling many immigrant daughters can relate to. Glennon told me that the dads he spoke with also felt disconnected from their adult daughters. He believes women cope with the lack of depth by brushing their father off, saying, no, I can't talk. I've got things to do. That can leave dads confused and hurt, fueling the cycle, right? Because now they're 60. And like, hey, you got some time for me? Well, I don't know how to have time for you because you never really made time for me in the way that I show up. You just wanted me to be a boy. You just wanted me to be a boy. Anyway, for Nielsen, dad-daughter tension has an obvious solution: more quality time together. She acknowledged that communication styles can differ by gender, of course, which I'm okay with that. But she emphasized that regardless of those differences, the more attention fathers and daughters devote to each other, the better the bonds tend to be. Yeah, because it doesn't matter what the differences are in terms of our genders. Just learn one another then. Okay, if it's a little bit different, okay, well, learn how to engage. And oftentimes they're different only by socialization reasons anyway. So that means socialize each other into something else. Love and engagement and vulnerability in love and in relationship is transformative. Let's transform it into something else. More fathers do seem to be changing their lifestyle, which is true, to make time for their kids, daughters included. Modern dads, on average, do 3 times more childcare than fathers in 1965. Shout out. Want to be clear. That is true. We've seen an obvious shift in the way that men engage with kids and family dynamic versus back in the day, which is beautiful. We really are evolving as a species. Thank you. Some are fighting for better joint custody laws. A growing number are forging paid work to stay at home. Nielsen told me that men are no less instinctively nurturing or empathetic than women. I'm going to leave that there. It's not gender specific. It's socialization. It is gender specific in terms of how we socialize the genders. But I just don't, it don't come natural to me like that. No. It was beat out of you. Many lament the time they spend away from their kids. Several of the daughters I spoke with were also carving out time for their father. They told me about planning annual daughter-dad road trips and going to counseling together. Shadi Shahanavas, forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, I'm sure I did, told me that in her experience, theirs are some of the quickest relationships to remedy. Okay, interesting. Even between daughters and fathers whose dynamic has become intensely strained, Nielsen has argued that relationships can and do recover. For Melissa Schultz, healing came posthumously. I know I'm saying that word wrong. In the decades since her father's death, her anger toward him softened. She still mourns what she never had, she told me, but she has come to empathize with him. He had a lot of pain as a child with both his parents, which, again, I get that. Like I said, I have grace because I get what he grew up with. Nobody is born wanting to be a bad dad or a bad person. No one, truly. We are all a compilation of experiences that we've gone through. For Joshua Coleman, who spent years estranged from his adult daughter, reconciliation came sooner. To rebuild trust, he told me he learned to stop defending himself. Listen, we can go home on that note. Honestly, that's the thing, guys. Too often men hear critique or reflection through the lens of a critique of their entire self and a critique of entirely how they show up. And that's for a couple reasons, because society, especially black men, this gets nuanced when you talk about races, because I know particularly for black people, men have been criticized, and a lot of bad behaviors, if you will, that show up in black communities are often pathologized. And so if one black man robs a store, then now you see it on the news, or now you see it in culture, and they create these narratives around what it is to be a black man. And so of course black men have been more defensive because they're seen through this pathologized horrible person lens. And so you come home and then you're like, well, dang, you just judge everything I do. You just can't get enough of judging me and being mean to me. And in totality, they're actually speaking to the culture in whole, right? And women just have become, black women especially, have just become the recipient of the mass oppression that the culture has placed onto them. But that's more specific to our culture. I think generally, though, men are so accustomed to being told that they have to win, and they are battling those internal pressures that they feel all the time of I just want to win, I just want to be the best, I just want to be the fastest, I just want to be the greatest, and if I'm not, then I'm insufficient, I'm not enough, I don't make enough money, I don't have enough this. And so they're always trying so hard to stay ahead. So as soon as these are the thoughts that they consistently have in their own minds, and then the second just a wee woman come in and say, baby, can you put that toilet seat down next time? I just don't do nothing right. All you do is complain about what I do. Can I do one thing right? I mean, I pay the water bill. It's like, what? But because they're hearing it through the backdrop of all of the noise that they feed themselves and the messages that the culture feeds them about being enough, right? And women, we have this in our own ways in terms of our looks and stuff. So I want to be clear, I'm not pedestalizing one or the other, or it's not the oppression Olympics. My point is, men, understand that in order to be in relationship and in order to have that resting space from all of the noise and the stresses and the pressures that you feel about being a man and about performing and being the best and winning, if you want a place to rest from that, because I get that we can reject patriarchy in our own internal lives, but the society is still such that it is. But you have to invest in this person, the people in your life, partners and children. And you don't get to just relegate all critiques into this same critique box, because that's not how relationships work, especially not ones that you want to feel good to you and feel safe. If you want it to feel safe, then you have to be a safe place, and you have to compartmentalize the stressors. I get that the world is harsh and mean and maybe expects too much of men, but don't offer things because capitalism is actually horrible to the quality of a family and the quality of life of families. I get all of that. But also, these humans that you made, that you cultivated your life with, they deserve the fullness of yourself, and not just this person who wants to put on this mask and the facade of I'm a winner and I don't fail and I don't fall and I don't falter. That's not going to get you anywhere. Anyway, okay. I think that, that was basically it. That's the whole article. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm going to do a long form video essay on the history of patriarchy and all of its implications and all of that. Maybe I will finish it. I don't know. That's what I'm working on right now. But tell me you guys' thoughts about this. Can you guys subscribe? Truly, I know so many people, they comment and they like it and all of the things, and I'm appreciative of that. But I really would like for you guys to subscribe and help me grow this channel. If you really enjoyed this, just take some time to just pause and just press that subscribe button. Even if maybe you're a YouTuber who's not really all engaged in YouTube to the fullest extent. But we really need you, us little small YouTubers, we need you guys to engage, and I really appreciate it. I don't say it as if I'm entitled to it, but just press subscribe if you can for me, and help me to grow this channel and help us to continue to have more conversations like this. Also, let me know if you like this sort of a format, because I read articles all the time. So I really could just do stuff like this more and kind of change up my format and just have more warm back and forth conversation with you guys. So I don't know. Okay, guys, talk to you later. Bye.